Here comes another bad poll for Labor, and it looks like Kevin Rudd's domain of social media could also be slipping away. With the latest on Poll Pulse, here's Jackson Goth-Snape from our Canberra Bureau.
Hello from Canberra. The big news in social media this week has actually been Tony Abbott's popularity on Twitter. Yes, you heard that right. Parallel to the polls, it appears that Tony Abbott is involved in more positive conversations on Twitter and has been for the last week or so. Poll Pulse, which is our software that tracks Twitter conversations and how positive or negative they are showing a clear upsurge in the popularity around Tony Abbott in the last week or so. It's mirroring what's happening in the polls, and if we look back at this week, at the end of the election, and Abbott goes on to win, I think it's going to be now that we identify that this was the week that he won it. But when it comes to Twitter, we can't treat all politicians the same. Many use the platform in quite different ways. We've got a graph here that's been produced by the Queensland University of Technology. It tracks Twitter posts over time since July 1 for the 10 most prominent politicians in Australia. You'll see right at the top is the outgoing MP Craig Emerson, who's a prolific Twitterer. Second is Senator Christine Milne from the Greens, and third is Malcolm Turnbull from the Liberals. What you can also see is Tony Abbott and Kevin Rudd, way down the bottom, they tweet on average about once or twice a day, using it as a broadcast platform, unlike the others who are using it to engage with voters and to participate in discussions on Twitter. What's also interesting to see is down the bottom, you'll see an orange line where Julie Bishop, about a week ago, has clearly made an effort to start using Twitter a lot more, and her rate of tweeting doubled approximately in that week. Also interesting, right down the bottom, Tony Abbott is actually tweeting approximately twice the rate of Kevin Rudd during the election campaign, which, I don't know, maybe it is working for him. Back to you.
This is very telling, as Kevin Rudd usually dominates in the social media sphere, the Twitter sphere. He's a very prominent force there. We can see that there's a change in tides now. Basically, he's been dominated in social media, and this is also echoed in the latest Nielsen poll. Absolutely,
there is a new Nielsen poll out today which shows that Labor's primary vote is down 2 points and the Liberals are up 1 point. On a two-party preferred basis, we're seeing a yawning gap between the Liberal Party and the Labor Party, with a two-party preferred score of 53 to 47. Now, obviously, the polls are going to narrow. The voting is going to narrow as we approach polling day. But I think it's quite telling in the fact that with Tony Abbott saying it's a tight contest. Look, I'm not sure if that's even true. I think if Tony Abbott sat back and did absolutely nothing, he would probably walk into a victory. He's only facing little spot fires as they emerge. Things like the shut up incident, which happened the other night during the Sky News debate. I think probably more worrying for Kevin Rudd is in his own seat of Griffith, where a Guardian Lonergan poll of about 958 people showed that he stood to lose the seat in the same way that John Howard lost his own seat of Bennelong at the 2007 election, facing Labor candidate Maxine McHugh. I think for Kevin Rudd that would be a rather crushing defeat to lose your own seat, and according to the polling up there, that looks like it's going to be the case. But again, it was only 958 people. The samples get a lot larger as you approach polling day, and people who were undecided start to firm up who they want to vote for. But I would say that would be the priority of him just staying in Parliament.
Right, okay, thank you very much. Now, on to the Greens Party. They've just launched their campaign under the leadership of Christine Milne. Now, they've currently occupy one seat. They no longer have the leadership of Bob Brown. What do you see for them this election?
That's probably one of the toughest things they're going to face, in that Christine Milne isn't as popular as Bob Brown. And I think people saw Bob Brown as, he was the real environmental crusader. Not that anyone else in the party isn't, I'm sure they all are, but Bob Brown really embodied that because he'd been around for such a long time.
He's quite likeable as well, I think.
Very much a likeable person, and I say that because he really embodied all the old green values that were very much associated with the environment. Having said that, Christine Milne today announced some policy platforms which include things like the Clean Air Act, focusing on mining companies moving houses away from coal trains and ensuring that coal trains are covered by plastic, and more emissions monitoring and targeting to ensure that the air we breathe is actually very clean. So we're not seeing a shift away from that environmental focus, but I think from the community's perspective, they're probably becoming a lot more cynical with the Greens because of things like their more bizarre policies when it comes to the Middle East. Christine Milne is obviously not as popular as Bob Brown, and I guess that's where it's really going to prove a tough contest for them, particularly with a guy like Adam Bandt, who it's worth remembering that during the campaign for the seat of Melbourne at the last election, he actually lost on primary vote. He was 2 points down on the Labor candidate at the time, but he got over the line through Greens preferencing, through preferencing for the Greens, and that's not going to be the case this time because they've been the Greens have been preferenced below the Labor Party by the Liberals. So going to be a very tough contest for them at the coming election, and unfortunately, due to Christine Milne's lack of popularity against a guy like Bob Brown, it's going to be even tougher.
All right, fantastic. Thank you very much for joining us today, Yoni.
Thank you.
Let's now take a look at what's to come on Meet the Press tomorrow with Catherine Robinson.
This week on Meet the Press, the resurgence of Peter Beattie. Will or won't the former Queensland Premier make the political comeback he's hoping for? Plus, Greens leader Christine Milne joins our expert panel, the Sunday Telly's Deputy Editor Claire Harvey and Steve Lewis, News Corp Australia's national political correspondent. We'll be discussing whether or not Mr Beattie will be satisfied staying on the backbench or whether his sights are set on PM. Plus, all the very latest analysis of the Greens campaign launch. Meet the Press Sunday 10:30am on Network 10.
Also tomorrow on 10 is the Bolt Report. Let's see what Australia's most widely read columnist has lined up for Sunday.
In the history of Australia, people will look back on this third week of the election campaign and remember absolutely nothing. No big promises, no great vision. Only two things might have cut through to voters, and both involved rudeness. Tony Abbott was rude to Kevin Rudd during Wednesday's debate. "Does this guy ever shut up?" he said. And then there was Rudd's alleged rudeness to a makeup artist. Not good, given his history of not being as nice in private as he seems in public. Now, these things may seem trivial, but they counted, and counted against Rudd, because they fitted with Rudd's failures that do matter. That talking of his, where's the action ever been to match it? And that rudeness to the makeup lady, it's too much like Labor spin. The road you sold isn't what you get. Now, we might want more talk about grand plans, but accountability for past talk is also important. Talk is fine, but as Labor's finding out, if the deeds don't match it, you're in trouble.
And you can watch the Bolt Report and Meet the Press both on Network 10 tomorrow morning from 10. And you can watch this show every afternoon across all News Corp websites by following the links to Voice of Australia. I'm Josh Wall. Thank you for your company.